was the tax farce on taxes met the last 2 days. You were at the Marble Palace. I'm sorry you had to go there, but you were there. So kind of tell us what the feeling is. What were the discussions on the tax farce this time?
Well, the meetings this week were basically on the sales tax and specifically looking at sales tax exemptions and considering which ones to maybe take away. With the idea that, if we take these exemptions away, that technically can be considered maybe a tax increase because that money would then be flowing to the government, which was not flowing before. And so they're looking at all these tax exemptions, specifically sales tax exemptions, and seeing, okay, how much money would this mean if we got rid of this exemption? How much more money would the state get? And if they did get that money, what could they then do with it? Could they cut income taxes? Could they, not cut anything? Basically just trying to get an idea of what the value of these sales tax exemptions were. That was really the meat of this week's meeting, or this month's meeting. And then that'll flow into the April meeting as they'll actually kind of be debating and looking at, recommending, yes, get rid of this tax exemption, no, keep this one, based off input from the industries that are affected from those sales tax exemptions.
Do you think they see ending an exemption as a tax increase? I mean, your definition I agree with. If it's more money going to the government, that would be an increase, right? So would they see it as an increase? What do you think?
I think it probably depends on who you ask. I think some people, they've gotten to the point where they realize now, one of the senators made a comment yesterday, well, we'll probably raise some and then we'll lower some and it'll come out in a wash or revenue neutral type way. And so I think there are some who are kind of seeing that we've been down this road a few times now where we'll raise taxes one place and lower them somewhere else. And some will try to praise it as a, tax cut, or I don't know what they'll praise it as, but but it goes back to the idea of a revenue neutral tax cut, which really isn't a tax cut. And so at the end of the day, like you said, if the government's getting more money and if you take away these tax exemptions, I mean, some of them may need to be taken away. They're probably not very justified. But if you do that, I would like to see, we're going to cut spending, whatever that amounts, to where, there's not more going out in spending. So we'll see. But in the April meeting, that's what they'll be debating. They gave basically a laundry list. Each member of the task force was given a list of all the exemptions. And then they went through and they picked off which ones they thought, we need to come back and review this and debate this in next month's meeting and consider maybe or not about keeping it or ending this sales tax exemption.
We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. I saw the list that the DFNA put out there of the sales tax exemptions and the amount of money that the state's not getting because this is exempt from sales tax. And I saw one of at the top of the list was the gas tax. There's not a sales tax on gasoline. There is, but there is a gas tax on it. And so they're saying that's exempt. And I thought to myself, surely they wouldn't leave the current taxes that we pay on gasoline on and add a 6.5% sales tax. I mean, what are you hearing about that?
So that's something that's actually come up a few times throughout this process in the tax force, because, like you said, it's not technically a sales tax the way it's structured now, but if they did add a sales tax, it would basically be double taxation on our gasoline. Now, when you look back, remember, Paul, in the 2017 session, that's what they're trying to do under Dan Douglas's bill. They're trying to add a sales tax at the wholesale level of gasoline. And that
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. This is Conduit News Radio, and it is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. And just so you know, we can't do the program without you. And if you want to contribute, one of the ways you can contribute to helping us build this liberty machine is just to let us know what you think. You can do that with the phone number, call or text 870-275-9799. Or you can sound off on our Facebook live stream right now, facebook.com/Conduit News. Just look up Conduit News on Facebook in your app if you want, and you can kind of go from there. Let's see here. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Mr. Tim Loggins. He is from the Patriots of Act 746. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I want to talk about an expected, I guess a lot of people are waiting on an opinion from Attorney General Leslie Rutledge concerning the penalty for carrying a weapon without a concealed handgun permit. Senator Linda Collins-Smith requested that opinion. Still waiting on that. And again, Patriots of Act 746 has like $1,000 reward if you can find in the statute where it does say that there's a penalty. We'll be talking to him about that as well as other things because there are some real issues. Let me just ask you this. Do you believe that the government should enforce the law as it is written? And if you believe that the government should enforce the law as it is written, there's a legitimate question as to what the Arkansas State Police are doing with the new enhanced carry law. There are clearly big-time flaws in the law, and I am being told right now that the Arkansas State Police are ignoring the new enhanced carry laws, the bad parts of it, because it would it would expose a lot of people as being legislatively inept for what they've done, and so they're ignoring it until January, until hopefully they can get a fix in and try to, But I just would say, well, why not enforce the law if that's what it is? I mean, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it. So we'll be talking with Tim Loggins about that. Then to the top of the next hour, we got a bunch of stuff to get to. Great article up at conduitforaction.org about the governor's announcement to reduce state agencies by 50%. So we'll be talking about that, as well as California has decided to sue the federal government or the Trump administration because the census is coming up again. Every 10 years, you have to do a census. It's a constitutional requirement. And one of the things that the Trump administration has added, that has been on there for 100 years or better, is the citizenship question. And California is now saying you can't do that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And what I am not really hearing many people discuss concerning that issue is the reason California is so bent out of shape about this is actually it may discourage illegal immigrants from filling out the survey, right? And if that happens, how does that affect congressional apportionment when it comes to, you know what I mean? If you have people who are illegal on there filling out the census, then all of a sudden that number is now used into how many House of Representatives, what the number of your delegation is for the House. I don't see many people talking about that. It's pretty interesting that that's the real reason they're so bent out of shape about this. All right, so we'll be talking with, we'll be doing all that today and more. But I wanted to start today. You know, today is Wednesday, and it's Hump Day, as they call it. You know, get over this, and we're almost to the weekend. And, of course, this weekend is Easter, which is one of my favorite holidays. I mean, you know, I would say Christmas is definitely number one just because of I just feel like on the whole of my life, you know, some of the best memories that I have are around Christmas. But Easter, theologically, is quite more significant when you look at the death, the burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the atonement for sin. Now, in getting prepared for Easter, I wanted to take this particular segment. I recently came across a new little piece of knowledge that I haven't really never had taught to me before, and I saw it in a video by a guy that I really enjoy his videos. I think it's almost like a new art he's invented. His name is Trey Smith, and he's on YouTube, and he's got a wealth of videos out there. Very powerful ministry. And he brought my attention to a verse in Psalm 22. Okay? Now, this verse in Psalm 22 is actually just the whole Psalm 22 is this why have you forsaken me? This is Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? And it is believed by Christians that this verse in Psalm 22 is actually, basically a prophecy of Jesus on the cross, being separated from his Father, being cut off, being made sin for us. And I wonder, and a lot of people don't understand this, but back in, if you take yourself and if you try to put yourself in the shoes of a 33 A.D. Jewish person, when Jesus does shout out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? I wonder how many people where it clicked and people were like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? I would like to think it happened to some. You got to understand, to a 33 AD Jew, to hear the words, my God, why have you forsaken me, would be like me telling a modern-day Christian, for God so loved the world. You would be able to finish that verse in John 3:16, right? Most people would. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life, right? So I just wonder, when Jesus says that on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me, if there was anybody there that... well, they would know that that's Psalm 22, and they would know the entire verse. Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted, they trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. Now here's the verse that's this week that was taught to me that I didn't really know. Listen to this, number 6, verse 6. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. Now this is interesting because you could just take that verse 6, but I am a worm and not a man, to be basically that is something that is lowly, but I'm a worm and I'm not a man. I'm beneath all of this. I mean, the fact that Jesus came here in the first place is extremely humbling, for God to come and be subjected to this world that is fallen. But interestingly enough, the verse here, the word worm, is not the normal word that you would use. If you take it all the way back to the Hebrew, you get a word spelled Tolath, which is the word for that worm used. It's not the word for a grub. It's actually the word used for a specific type of worm. That specific type of worm is actually called the crimson worm, or it's also called the scarlet worm. And it was a worm that was found traditionally in the Middle East. It was found in Israel, in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, this particular publication. You can find other people talking about this. There's plenty of examples of people talking about the Toloth in 22:6, Psalm 22:6, and comparing it to the scarlet worm, because that's what it is. But there are other publications that will even tell you that the scarlet worm was actually used because of its red dye capabilities to dye clothing or to dye garments and things like that the color red. The particular video that I watched actually even said that that's the worm that was actually used to dye certain cloths that surrounded the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle. This is the worm they used in order to get that color, which is even more significant. But specifically, what is the biology of this scarlet worm? What does it do? Well, this one particular website that I found, I feel like it does kind of summarize it the easiest. It's discovercreation.org. And it says, usually in the Bible, the Hebrew word for worm is rima, which means a maggot, but the Hebrew word Jesus used here for worm is toloth, which means crimson worm or scarlet worm. Both scarlet and crimson are the colors of blood, deep red. So what's significant about this is that when the crimson worm or the scarlet worm decides to, when it's time, the female, to have babies, what it actually does is it decides to find a post or a tree of some kind, and it crawls up that post in that tree. And the crimson scarlet worm then embeds itself into the wood, where it's never going to be, it's not going to move again. Okay, its lifespan is over. And so as the babies start to hatch underneath the mother, the mother essentially pulls her body apart, and her blood actually covers the babies of the worm. And the babies actually feed on the blood, and the babies actually feed on the body of the mother until they are ready and, are now self-sufficient. And what's also very interesting about this particular crimson or scarlet worm is and I'm talking about this because Easter Sunday is very close, is that the mother stays up on that post or that tree for 3 days. And after the mother's been up there for 3 days, the red stain on the wood goes away, and it turns into a white wax that flakes off and falls to the ground like snow. So, for example, when you go to Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 18, it says, "Come now, let us reason together. Says the Lord, though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool." Isn't that interesting? And what's even more, what's even crazier is, you can this concept of dying for your young or dying for your babies, and they actually that it's the blood that sustains the life blood, the life force is in the blood, and the blood is what actually sustains these little baby crimson scarlet worms. You hearken back to Hebrews chapter 2. And I think it's verse 10. "For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. For he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one source. That is why he is not ashamed to call them brothers, saying, I will tell of your name to my brothers in the midst of the congregation. I will sing of your praise." Anyway, this is. Did anybody out there know this? Have you ever heard this? I just thought this was just such a neat, and it's not a coincidence that this particular. A lot of people. Okay, for example, a lot of people. I can't tell you how many times on Easter Sunday, for example, you would hearken back to Psalm 22. Right, you would hearken back to this verse, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And you read the whole thing, and you read how distant this particular person is from God, but at the same time is aware of his reverence and holiness. But that verse about "I am a worm and not a man," you can take it both. You can take it a bunch of different ways. and they don't contradict this idea of, I'm lowly. It could just be, hey, I'm lowly and I'm not a man because I'm up on this cross. But if you actually look at the Hebrew word, toloth, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, so forgive me. I've never taken a Hebrew class in my life, right? But if you actually look at that word, it's specifically referring to the crimson or scarlet worm that goes up on a tree for 3 days, dies, or goes up on a tree, dies, stays there for 3 days. The blood nourishes the babies. The babies then are able to survive and live and go on to the next generation. And then that body stays up there for 3 days and then turns to a white wax and falls to the ground like snow. I just thought it was neat, to say the least. Joe, what did you think? You said it was amazing. It's very interesting that creation itself mimics the gospel in more than just this worm way. I mean, it happens in a lot of ways. All right, so we've got to take a break here. This is Conduit News Radio. And, again, we're going to be talking to Mr. Tim Loggins at the bottom of the hour of Patriots of Act 746. Don't go anywhere. Thanks so much for being with us. Back in just a moment. Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let's see, we have the ex-Justice Stevens, not Chief Justice, calls for gun control. 97. in an essay, urges the repeal of the Second Amendment. John Paul Stevens. Yeah, so we're talking about the U.S. Supreme Court. The retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens called Tuesday for the repeal of the Second Amendment, according to the Associated Press here. And see, now you notice that this is written here, Tuesday for the repeal of the Second Amendment to allow for significant gun control legislation. So that some would even say, well, no, it's not. It's repeal the Second Amendment, but then also we'll have significant gun control legislation. You'll still be able to have guns. Yeah. The 97-year-old Stevens wrote in an essay on the New York Times website that repeal would weaken the National Rifle Association's ability to block constructive gun control legislation. Stevens was on the losing end of a 2008 ruling in which the High Court held that the Second Amendment gives individuals the right to own a gun for self-defense. I mean, how in the world could you see? What does that say about his active? I mean, if he's actually saying that the Second Amendment itself prevents the government from taking away your right to own guns, then I mean, why? I mean, if he can say that now, why wouldn't he side in the Supreme Court decision 2008? Why wouldn't he be on the winning side by saying, personally, my opinions are. Now, I mean, I know I'm being naive here, but personally, my opinions are. But the Second Amendment is what it is. The Second Amendment is the barrier between the government and us and our weapons. It is a fundamental restraint on the power and authority of the government. 1 in 5 Americans now think that the Second Amendment should be abolished, according to new polls I read this morning. 1 in 5, 20% of the country thinks the Second Amendment should go away. And the sad thing is, I did listen to Jan Morgan on Roby Brock. She was interviewed by Roby Brock, and she was asked about these marches and the young people. And I thought her answer was good. She was positive in saying, hey, look, it's good that young people are trying to get involved in something, but I'd love to talk to these young people and actually tell them the history of gun control and how it leads to mass murder. How governments murder their citizens. They annihilate their citizens. It was a really good moment. It was good. It was just so refreshing to have somebody teach the people who are going to listen to that Roby Brock show, where it's registration, and registration leads to confiscation, and confiscation leads to annihilation. This is the history of the 20th century. This is what happened over and over again in the 20th century. If they disarm you, they will enslave you. Period. I saw a video the other day of some sheriff candidate over on the East Coast somewhere, talking about taking people's guns and actually laughing because he said, some people say for my cold dead hands, and he went, well, essentially saying, hey, look, well, if we decide to come get your guns and you don't want to give them up, all right, fine. If it's a gunfight you want, that's what we'll do. Saying that you should not have the same weapons, the same gun capabilities as the military does, and I completely disagree with that. This is crazy, though. People, maybe it's good that they're being honest, because I think, obviously, the majority of this country believes in what is a human right, and you need to start thinking of it this way. If you've never thought of the Second Amendment as a human right, you've got to start. This is the right to defend yourself, right? And in this day and age, it's the right to defend yourself with an incredible amount of efficiency, where we live in a society where, for the most part, a firearm makes a defenseless single mom, puts her on par with a bodybuilder in certain scenarios and situations. Do not cave in. You need to think of the Second Amendment as a human right to defend yourself, your family, and your property.
Was going to bring in, I think, $217 million if they got that passed. And so they're going to be, again, looking at that at least as what some are considering that, well, that's a sales tax exemption, even though there is a type of excise tax on there already on the sale of gasoline. And so that's something they'll be debating. I'm sure, some of the more conservatives on the task force will hopefully again bring up, this will be basically double taxation on this product. It will increase prices. I think it was about 10 cents per gallon whenever the measure that they tried to pass during the 2017 legislative session. But that is one that at least one of the members of the task force wanted to put on the list to be considered for next month's meeting.
Has there been any discussion about how we got to this point in terms of the number of exemptions and carve-outs that there are in the Arkansas tax code? I mean, has there been anyone who's just fessed up to it and said, it's just kind of the nature down here that over the years, special interests have been successful in carving out their little areas where they don't have to pay any taxes?
Yeah, I think some legislators have been pretty upfront with that, and I think everyone realizes that's what's happened for most of this. But really, those are some of the smaller ones. Maybe a few $1,000s that the state's not getting a $10,000 or so. Because some of the bigger ones are, like the grocery tax or the fuel tax. Some of the bigger ones are those, big ticket items. But yeah, when you look through some of these exemptions, I think I saw one. It's like specific entities or nonprofits or names, and so that's a special carve out if they start naming.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Specific companies. So
I've heard for a long time. We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. He was at the task force meeting on taxes, yesterday. I've heard for a while people complain that the reason government revenue is stagnant, which it's not. I mean, they keep getting more and more money from us every year. But that's what they claim, that the government is hurting because we have shifted away from a product-based economy where you actually go buy something and it's tangible and you hold it and you pay sales tax on it, to a service. There are way more services out there that people are purchasing now. It's more of a service economy, and services are not taxed. So they have a segment in there, or a section in there, about advertising, right?
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, thank you so much for being with us, folks. The phone number, 870-275-9799. You see it on your screen for those of you watching over at Facebook.com/Conduit News. Folks, this particular part of the program is brought to you by the Patriots of Act 746. They're on a mission to educate the people of the state of Arkansas about the realities of constitutional carry, the fact that you don't need a permission slip to carry a weapon, and the fact that Act 746 in Arkansas decriminalized the possession of a weapon, increased the burden of proof to the point where they've got to be able to prove that you were carrying that weapon with the intent to unlawfully use it or employ it against another person. It's an incredible law, an incredible development, and yet it's still taking a long time for the Arkansas State Police to acknowledge it. And then we have the Governor, Asa Hutchinson, who tries to claim that we have constitutional carry, gets the definition wrong, and then says, but check with your local prosecutor to make sure, essentially promoting some sort of Wild West type of government where we don't have an expectation of what the laws are from one part of the state to another, which is just really bad government, no matter how you look at it. Welcome to talk more about this and Patriots of Act 746. We have, once again, Mr. Tim Loggins is with us. Tim, thanks so much for coming back on, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. And how you're heading up the Northeast Arkansas chapter of Patriots of Act 746, and that's been going pretty good for you, right?
Yeah, we've been doing pretty well. We're up to almost 1,000 members now. And we started this group in late November. So from November to now, we've gained 1,000 members almost. And
you started it because, I mean, it's a 12. I mean, the group's 12,000 strong. It's a lot of people, but there were already plenty of participants in other parts of the state, western Arkansas and elsewhere. It just was kind of lacking over here in northeast Arkansas, right?
It was lacking on participation, Paul, in northeast Arkansas. We were kind of lagging behind the times, and having a regional chapter allows us to focus on issues that are happening, in our hometown, not just all across the state. Most of the members are still members of the main page, but this lets us focus and concentrate on our elected officials here and issues that arise here.
Yeah. And so check them out, folks. Go to Facebook.com and just, in your account there, you can search for Patriots of X746. It's a closed group, but it has to be a member. And it's really a great tool to get educated, and a lot of patriots that know a whole lot about what's going on, not just about guns, but about a bunch of other stuff going on in the state. So, Tim, I wanted to talk about this opinion that a lot of people are waiting on. Now, this is a lot of people don't know this, but Senator Linda Collins Smith wrote a letter to Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, and this letter asked Leslie Rutledge what? You go ahead and tell us.
A pretty simple request for an opinion. It basically what it said was she wants to know what law mandates that you have to have a concealed carry license to carry concealed, and in the law, what punishments prescribed if you carry a weapon concealed without that permit.
Very simple. What is the punishment if you do? Exactly. And so the answer to that is what, according to you, Tim Loggins?
I mean, the law is pretty clear. The answer is there is no law that says you have to have a concealed carry permit to carry concealed, and there is no punishment in any Arkansas law for carrying a handgun concealed without a license. It doesn't exist.
So if the Attorney General delivers an opinion here, and delivers the opinion that we want, that you say, the law is clear, I mean, what practically do you think, what effect will that have?
If the Attorney General says anything other than what I just said, Paul, she's writing law. She's not interpreting it. The law says what it says. It doesn't say what it doesn't say. The governor said that, of course, it makes sense that you must have a permit, but making sense is not the law. And the law is pretty clear. I mean, let me read you right quick on 573-120, which is what we call Act 746. A person commits the offense of carrying a weapon if he or she possesses a handgun, knife, or club on or about his or her person in a vehicle occupied by him or her, or otherwise readily available for use, with a purpose to attempt to unlawfully employ the handgun, knife, or club as a weapon against the person. It says on or about your person, open or concealed, or otherwise ready available. That's pretty clear language. I mean, and it doesn't mention anything about a license. And if you look at 573, 301 through 324, that's the laws governing, the concealed handgun permitting. Nowhere in there does it say you have to have a permit. It doesn't. It's just not there.
So I really appreciate you boiling it down like in its most simplistic form, and I know the audience appreciates that. My question would be: are there any other statutes? I guess what I want to know is how long should it take to come to a conclusion one way or the other? I mean, are we do we have to go to a library and pore over documents like Gandalf did at Minas Tirith, when he's trying to figure out if, I know this is a terrible reference, but if Isildur's ring really was the One Ring? I mean, what kind of research are we having to do here to get us to the final part where we have an opinion about what the law says?
Paul, I wished I could speak for the Attorney General, but I cannot. My understanding is she has a team of attorneys that are researching this and writing opinions and going to submit a final opinion to her for approval. There's just not that much to research. I mean, the gun laws are 573, through 324. I mean, it's pretty, 573, 100 through 324. That's the gun laws. And there's not a whole lot else to research.
Okay, so are you hoping that we get this information, when do you think we should get it? I mean, how long has it been, actually, since Linda Collins Smith wrote that letter? How long has it been?
My senator, she's a senator in my district. She submitted it somewhere around mid-January. And my understanding is most attorney general opinions that are requested from lawmakers take generally about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And we're approaching 10 weeks now on this opinion.
Okay.
So we're well past what is normal. And I'm not really sure what the holdup is on it, Paul. I mean, we can all have some conjecture on that, but I certainly hope the Attorney General, and I'm calling on her to go ahead and get this thing out before the primaries. I hope it's not a political consideration.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it does need to be out before the primaries. I definitely think so. We think that would be.
You've got Jan Morgan that is saying we're a constitutional carry state, and you have the governor that's saying it's up to individual county prosecutors. I think there needs to be some clarity before voters go to the polls in May 22nd.
That's a really good point. All right, well, we're talking with Tim Loggins of Patriots of X 746. So, yeah, we will wait. I mean, hopefully the Attorney General will get that opinion out very, very soon. Kind of shifting gears here, we've talked many times, you and I, Tim, about the enhanced carry law that's now they're trying to implement it, and it's pretty disastrous. Most people call it a garbage bill. But I have been hearing reports and whispers that the Arkansas State Police is now going to ignore parts of the law that would expose politicians as having legislated poorly, let's say. Are you hearing the same thing?
Well, I know that they've extended some of the rules and changed the rules since it originally passed. It went into effect January, and originally instructors had 3 months to get qualified to teach, and now they've extended that to 6 months somehow, and I'm not really sure how they've done that. They now have until June to pass the enhanced portion so that they can continue teaching concealed carry. So that's at least one portion that they kind of changed what the law said, and I'm not really sure how they did that.
Well, see, I had heard that they're even pushing it out further now till January.
Well, on their site they say June.
Okay.
but that I don't know what they're unofficially saying. And the law says that every instructor must offer that class. And you have a lot of instructors from what I've heard said they're just not going to do it. They'll give up their instructorship before they do that.
So practically, what the law I think says shall teach. I don't have it right here in front of me, but or must teach or shall teach. They're saying that existing concealed carry handgun instructors shall teach the new class, which would mean they have to pass the new requirements, the enhanced carry training as well in order to be able to teach it. And so, practically speaking, Tim, if they were to enforce the law right now as written, what would most concealed handgun instructors do?
Most of them would have to submit their license to teach and give it up. They wouldn't be able to teach the class period.
Yeah, so they would basically walk. They would basically just walk and say, okay, I'm done. And essentially the whole, this whole permission slip program, which is good if you want reciprocity with other states. That's one advantage.
It is.
But it would basically be gutted. If the enhanced carry law was implemented as is, it would have destroyed the existing enhanced carry culture right now, right?
I know that there were some legislators back in December that said they were going to fix this. They attempted to fix it during the fiscal session, and it didn't pass, and that was appropriate because fiscal session isn't the place for normal legislation and normal business. But I think they kind of, a nod and a wink, hey, state police, go ahead and extend this out until we can get to regular session, and then we'll fix it. Mm-hmm. But quite honestly, Paul, there is no fixing it. The enhanced carry is garbage. It does nothing.
Did I read where
I was reading an article online, Paul. There's been almost 1,000 enhanced license issued since January. But then the article went on and said, all the places that could put up signs or give verbal notice that you can't carry a weapon even with the enhanced, and so a sign or the owner saying, hey, don't carry in here does away with that enhanced. And I mean, it does nothing. You're just paying more money for nothing.
Did I read where that law says that you have to retreat if possible? Does it stipulate that? Do you know?
I do not know that, Paul. I haven't read that part of it. And quite honestly, that law is so cumbersome to read. That's another reason that the law is garbage, because it just added more confusion, and I believe it did that intentionally, to our gun laws. Right now, the odds are that if you have an enhanced carry license, you're probably going to be breaking the law and not knowing it at some point.
Wow. Because you're gonna assume.
I have more rights as a non-permit holder, and I'm a lot more clear on the law than someone that gets enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple. It's very confusing. It's very long. It's very lengthy. It added all kinds of rules and it's rules and regulation. It's what bureaucracy does, isn't it?
No,
Makes it harder.
No, you're exactly right. This whole thing is a bureaucratic nightmare, and it's more red tape, and what's so frustrating about it. And I did a segment, I guess, a couple days ago on it would be helpful if we could just all agree on what the definitions of certain words and phrases were. So if you say, if you say that you're going to cut taxes, but for example, the same amount of money is going to go to the government that is going there now after your so-called tax increase, well, or tax decrease or tax cut. That's not really a tax cut. So likewise, if you say you are for the Second Amendment, and you're standing up for the Second Amendment, well, what's the definition of that? Does that mean an enhanced licensing process? Because a lot of people think that that's actually diminishing the Second Amendment, not, enhancing it, to use their language. And so that's the most frustrating thing here is we have Republicans who want to go out and try to get the political credibility of claiming that they're for the Second Amendment, yet they pushed and crafted this bill that has actually made it worse, and it's not promoted the Second Amendment.
Well, I want to give you an example of that confusion, Paul, that's directly in the enhanced carry. We read the definition of Act 746, what the law says, 573-120 earlier, and it says on or about your person, correct?
Yes. In
a vehicle or otherwise readily available. Well, if you go to the state police website and you look at Rule 7.6, enhanced license, it says an enhanced license authorizes the licensee to carry or possess a concealed handgun in the building and on the grounds of certain locations. Possession is limited to carrying in the handgun on or about the licensee's person in a vehicle occupied by the licensee or otherwise readily available for use. They took Act 746, what the governor says allows open carry but not concealed, and in Rule 7.6 of the state police's rules, the same definition now says that's an enhanced carry, concealed. And they wonder why we say they're manufacturing confusion. On one hand, the governor says that means open carry, and now you have the state police in their own rules saying on or about your person in a vehicle or otherwise readily available. That means enhanced carry, concealed.
That means a concealed, yeah, wow. Yeah, they did that to probably weaken and muddy the water for the argument.
It's manufactured confusion.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, now, Tim, are you former law enforcement?
I am.
Okay.
I bleed blue.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there are some I love law enforcement, and I especially love law enforcement that has this mentality that, an armed society and law-abiding citizens carrying weapons is actually a good thing. And yet there are some in law enforcement that seem to not trust that concept, and maybe they don't trust an individual who's not a police officer with a gun. That kind of feels like there are two competing mentalities there. I'm not asking you to throw your brothers under the bus or anything, but have you found that that there are some maybe law enforcement officers that you've worked with who just kind of have a distrust of the average person owning and possessing a firearm?
Paul, I don't know any law enforcement officers that think law-abiding citizens should not own a weapon. They believe, by and large, completely throughout law enforcement, that an armed society is a polite society. Almost every officer I know believes in the Second Amendment, and they understand what that means. It's not about hunting. But you do have some people in administrative positions that believe it's more about control and ability to circumvent the Constitution. I've got a bad guy with a gun and I need to take some shortcuts, and my officers need to take some shortcuts. And, you know, 99% of the law enforcement officers out there are good guys, and they're going to support the Constitution. You do have a few bad ones. But by and large, police officers believe that good guys should have guns. It makes us all safer.
Good. Well, maybe some of them believe that you should have it as long as you pay the government that, you know, the fee. The fee. Maybe that's the difference.
And you're right. That would make it a privilege and not a right.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And there are some that believe that. That's correct.
Well, Tim, I appreciate it, sir. It's always great to have you on, and so we're going to be following both of these things closely. Hopefully, we'll get that opinion from Attorney General Leslie Rutledge about the penalty and the actual statute. It's a great letter by Senator Linda Collins Smith, and we'll be following the rollout of the enhanced carry. I just don't. I mean, I just don't understand if the law is written. Why can you pick and choose what you enforce? And I think there's some political considerations maybe that are going on here. I'll give you the last word, Tim Loggins.
I want to thank Senator Linda Collins Smith for requesting that opinion. I think her heart was in the right place. She's trying to get some clarity on it. She knows what the law says, and she's trying to get the Attorney General to come out with the truth.
All right.
And that's really what we're asking the Attorney General for, is just tell the truth. Let's don't politicize the law. Let's tell the taxpayers and the citizens of Arkansas what the law says.
Tim Loggins, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Paul.
All righty. That's Tim Loggins with Patriots of Act 746. Check him out, folks. It's Facebook.com. Just search for Patriots of Act 746. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So Jan Morgan spoke at is it the Republican Women's Group? Is that what it was? Last night in Fayetteville, there was a meeting, I guess, of the GOP Republican Women's Group. And so I've been told we have Doug Thompson. You know, Doug Thompson's the political writer for the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. He's on the beat, if you will, that particular beat. I'm told he wasn't there. And there was someone else there. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know if Doug Thompson is not on the political beat anymore. Maybe he's been moved or something. That's interesting. Phone number 870-275-9799. It's 870-275-9799. If you would like to call or text, check us out online, facebook.com/Conduit News, or you can get this podcast, audio only, available here in just a moment over at conduitnews.com. We got a great next hour for you. Hey, tomorrow on the program, matter of fact, the next couple of days, our 7 o'clock hour is pretty much booked. Tomorrow on the program, we'll be talking with Senator Brian King and Senator Linda Collins-Smith. And then on Friday, State Representatives Kim Hammer and Mark Lowry will be on the program Thursday and Friday. So we have that. Anyway, coming up next, we'll talk a little census, as well as this new article, Reducing Number of State Agencies is not about reducing government, according to Mr. David Ferguson over at conduitforaction.org. Check it out right now. Back in a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Prices, I think it was about 10 cents per gallon whenever the measure that they tried to pass during the 2017 legislative session. But that is one that at least one of the members of the task force wanted to put on the list to be considered for next month's meeting.
Has there been any discussion about how we got to this point in terms of the number of exemptions and carve-outs that there are in the Arkansas tax code? I mean, has there been anyone who's just fessed up to it and said, it's just kind of the nature down here that over the years, special interests have been successful in carving out their little areas where they don't have to pay any taxes?
Yeah, I think some legislators have been pretty upfront with that, and I think everyone realizes that's what happened for most of this. But really, those are some of the smaller ones. Maybe a few $1,000s that the state's not getting, a $10,000 or so. Because some of the bigger ones are, like the grocery tax or the fuel tax. Some of the bigger ones are those, big ticket items. But yeah, when you look through some of these exemptions, I think I saw one. It's like specific entities or nonprofits or names, and so that's a special carve out if they start naming.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Specific companies. So
I've heard for a long time. We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. He was at the task force meeting on taxes, yesterday. I've heard for a while people complain that the reason government revenue is stagnant, which it's not. I mean, they keep getting more and more money from us every year. But that's what they claim, that the government is hurting because we have shifted away from a product-based economy where you actually go buy something and it's tangible and you hold it and you pay sales tax on it, to a service. There are way more services out there that people are purchasing now. It's more of a service economy, and services are not taxed. So they have a segment in there, or a section in there, about advertising, right? Or you think about the services that you pay for and how you're not charged taxes for that. So is there going to be a push, you think, to start taxing services right now where there is no tax?
There were a few services, but really not a ton that were kind of on that list that ended up going on this, master list, if you want to call it, that'll be reviewed in April. Now there were some that it was like subscriptions to newspapers, advertising on billboards, advertising on in newspapers, to sell newspapers themselves, that kind of a thing. So that's still not really much of a service. It's a product, an advertising, an ad in a newspaper, something like that. So there wasn't really that much of a push. I know Nicole Keating from the Tax Foundation was there on Monday, and I was not there in person on Monday. I was there Tuesday. But looking through the presentation, she worked with Acre, writing a really good outline of some tax reform ideas and kind of where we are in Arkansas. And I know that's something that they have mentioned is, okay, we need to add more services under the sales tax, or in some way tax it to make up for this, like you said, the change over time from more product-based purchasing to more and more services-based purchasing.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess to kind of recap here, I'm worried, like you, that this is going to be more like, revenue neutral, and revenue neutral tax cuts are not tax cuts, in my opinion. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of people telling their constituents that they cut their taxes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's still not clear. There's been some mentions from time to time. What's the end goal? Is the end goal, to get the top income rate from 6.9 to 6%? Is the end goal to get rid of the income tax? Is the end goal just to find enough money so that we can keep increasing spending like we are? It hasn't been super clear, at least from attending these the last several months, what the end goal is for the task force, because when you look at the mission and what they came out with, it was, tax reform. And so that can mean a lot of different.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning. Hour number 2 here. Thanks so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we were both venting about Governor Asa Hutchinson and just some little things about his governing style that annoy us. Big things, actually, not little things. And as we were talking, I'm going to be honest, we just kind of started talking about, because there's a lot of talk about the lack of a debate. So Asa doesn't want to debate Jan Morgan and is avoiding the debate. And they now are saying, Jamie Barker is now saying, the campaign spokesperson for Asa Hutchinson is now saying that a debate is out of the question or shouldn't even be talked about or considered because Jan says she won't endorse Asa if Asa wins the primary, so that means there doesn't need to be a debate. It's very weird logic, but hey, that's what's going on. So we were kind of talking about that, and we were talking about the prospect of a debate and how maybe Asa's delivery style versus Jan's delivery style and how polished Jan is because, just because she's a polished public speaker and how Asa, compared to her, isn't. And then that kind of morphed into a conversation about how Asa is, I'm a limited government conservative. Asa Hutchinson is not. So we kind of went into just how it's very obnoxious when you listen to him speak. He always tries to ride the fence. You always have to figure out a way of like interpreting what he's saying. I mean, and we try to teach you how to interpret the carefully crafted language. Well, anyway, as I was kind of venting, this friend I was talking to, and I hadn't talked to him in a while, he said, yeah, when you listen to Asa Hutchinson, it's like the essence of bureaucrat. And I said, parody. Stolen. So we will now begin writing a parody. Just so you know, this is coming down the pike, and I'm committed to doing this because it's going to be really fun. We're going to do... let's just say that the Aristocrat Survey in Arkansas will be launching a new cologne line, and it will be called The Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence. The Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa. Anyway, it's going to be fun. We're going to do it. It's funny how conversations can inspire me, and it wasn't my idea. The phrase was not my idea, the essence of bureaucrat, but it's going to be a great perfume or cologne or... Can you say, you know what? We'll probably have to come up with some of that fragrance. Perfume is, too gender specific. Cologne is gender specific. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But in all seriousness, Don't you think it's odd that Asa doesn't want to debate Jan Morgan, and shouldn't we? I mean, let me just tell you this. What if you guys out there decided to call the governor's office, and what if you decided, in the interest of him, I mean, you know, Asa Hutchinson is no fan of Conduit News. He's made that abundantly clear. I was looking at some of our analytics, and our since the governor's been attacking us, our numbers have actually seen an increase. And I will say that, you know, if you were to call and you were to actually just urge the governor to debate so that we could hear his side of the story, I would say as the people of Arkansas, or anybody who wants to participate in this Republican primary, I mean, we deserve to hear both candidates and hear both sides. We deserve to hear Asa's side. I mean, I've wanted Asa to. My whole thing is, if you do something, it's up to you to convince. It's up to you, however you govern as a public official. If you want to get the job back, if you want to get reelected, you have to convince the people with your argument. Now, and that's especially true on controversial issues. If you have a controversial issue, let's say you support Obamacare Medicaid expansion at all costs. Let's say you support taxpayer-funded revenue streams to the tune of $2 billion going to make your friends over at Blue Cross Blue Shield filthy rich. Let's say that you support that. And let's say that your base doesn't. Okay, well, maybe it is the best thing to do. Maybe it is. Come and convince us with your argument as to why it is. The problem that I would see there is, in the past, there is an honest attempt to convince with the argument. Instead, there is just, it's not Obamacare. No. The right is saying this is Obamacare, and it's not. It's just denial. It's denial you did what you did. Pretty frustrating. But, you know, there still needs to be a debate. Let the people make up their minds for themselves. I don't see what the problem is, you know. Either way, it's like, you know, if Asa Hutchinson had a winning message, he would be, you know, we'd already had a debate. We'd have had 2 debates. If Asa Hutchinson had a winning conservative message in a Republican primary, we would have already had debates. But, I mean, if you guys were to call the governor's office and just say, hey, you know, we think you should debate, just, you know, to be respectful, we think you should debate Jan Morgan. I mean, I think that's something that maybe that would help. I don't know, maybe it wouldn't help. But I definitely think that there needs to be a debate. If anything, I would enjoy parsing through the audio for you guys to create future programs. So the census is going out. Census goes out every 10 years. California's mad, though. Do you know why? Because President Donald Trump has decided to add a question back onto the United States Census for 2020. Keep in mind, this is a constitutional requirement. This has to happen every 10 years. Trump administration is going to ask people about their citizenship. And that has now resulted in lawsuits. And the people who are suing, the states who are suing, are states who vote Democrat more than Republican. And the reason they're suing is because they are worried that if you put a citizenship question on the census, that immigrants will dodge the survey altogether, or as a result, dilute the state's political representation. Now, I just read part of this article from the AP. Now, what this is saying, illegal immigrants will dodge. If you are a legal immigrant, you will take the census, right? If you're a naturalized citizen, you have nothing to worry about. And I think now we understand why Obama took the question off that had been on there forever. Or, I mean, I don't know if it's been on there. I mean, it's been on there for over 100 years before Obama got there, took it off. Huh. So why is it a constitutional requirement to conduct a census throughout the several states every 10 years? Well, it's very simple. For the very reason the Democrat states are upset. The census is there to apportion population. You know, you got to have at least 30,000 people. Of course, we've now capped the House of Representatives at, 430? Is it 435? We now capped it at that. So, but you've got to do the census so that you know how many people and how many. Basically, each state's House delegation is going to be different. And so that's why you do the census. You got to make sure that we still have the type of representation that is, it's an attempt to be as equitable as we can. Now, in reality, it'd be better if they hadn't capped the House of Representatives. Now, I know you'd have to have a much larger chamber, but can you imagine if you had, on average, every 30,000 people actually had a voice, had a representative in D.C.? Wow. It'd be harder to corrupt. It's easier to corrupt a smaller number of people. So it's easier to corrupt like 535 people than it is to corrupt, 10,000. But I know that's not practical. I mean, what? This isn't Star Wars. Hey, Joe, what's the name of the planet in Star Wars where they got the Senate and all that stuff? Coruscant. Yeah, this isn't Coruscant here. What are we talking about, people? But, I mean, can you believe that they're just really being honest here? They would rather have essentially illegal representation. They would rather have illegal immigrants fill out the survey claiming to be citizens, and then those citizens get to, those numbers then go into over-representation. You're now overrepresented in Washington, D.C. for people who aren't even American citizens. Now, for me to even say that, people on the left would say, that's so racist. No, I mean, we're talking about you're either a citizen or you're not a citizen, right? Either a citizen or you're not. And if you're a citizen, then you have rights and you can vote, supposedly. Of course, I think a lot of this stems from Donald Trump and his commission to investigate voter fraud. And just so you know, that commission was disbanded, right? The commission is no longer doing its job, but I think we would be naive if you think there was no data that was derived from that. And I got a feeling that Donald Trump in the Trump administration is going to do something and reveal a lot of corruption when it comes to voter fraud at some point, probably this year. So certainly keep that in mind. But this is nothing new, by the way. And this idea of wanting to follow the letter of the law, or this idea of being weary of too many people, too many people who are not supposed to, fill out the survey and that sort of thing. This is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. But I just think it's interesting. Adding the immigrant question that has been on there for a long time is now all of a sudden, well, they're going to say it's racist. Donald Trump is saying, hey, look, Donald, they're going to claim. I heard this one guy, it was the Attorney General of California. He was saying, well, given the fact that Donald Trump has treated immigrants so poorly, it's like Donald Trump, in many regards, betrayed what conservatives wanted and gave the DACA kids everything that they wanted, was going to solve their problem, and the Democrats abandoned them. And nobody in the media points that out, by the way. I mean, people were just regurgitating that, given the fact that Donald Trump hates immigrants. It's like, wait a second. The illegal immigrants who were here, Donald Trump was willing, the kids, the DACA kids, he was willing to provide a path to citizenship. He just wanted funding for the border wall, and and yet the Democrats would rather the DACA kids remain victims The Democrats would rather the DACA kids remain victims because they're more useful as a political tool that way than actually solve the problem because they didn't want Donald Trump to get the border wall or get the credit for solving the problem as a businessman would. We're going to take a break. It's Conduit News Radio. Coming up, the bottom of the hour, reducing the number of state agencies. Is it really about shrinking government? And again, I feel like the theme of this week has been, can we agree on what the definition of words and phrases are? If we could, it would be a lot easier, but with carefully crafted language, it's very difficult. Back in just a moment.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. It's a Paul Harrell parody.
When the politician starts, he says liberty's on the march. But the Marble Palace sure has its ways. And the voters who believe realize they've been deceived when words are weighed next to deeds. Asa doesn't care about our Constitution. His conservatism is an illusion. Line item vetoes and higher taxes. We all voted for him once, but he won't make spending cuts. Let's all vote and say, hey Asa, we won't get fooled again. The carefully crafted talk puts the people into shock. Once the light of truth exposes all the lies. With the nephews in control and the criminals on parole, the only thing the people can do is vote. Asa doesn't care about our Constitution. His conservatism is an illusion. Line item vetoes and higher taxes. We all voted for him once, but he won't make spending cuts. Let's all vote and say,
oh my goodness.
Hey Asa, we won't get fooled again.
All right, so on our Facebook page,
Paul Harrell parody.
Oh man, it's a group effort. It's like it's like a round table of writers for like NBC or Saturday Night Live or something. On the Facebook page, people are wanting to contribute to this new parody that we're working on called "The Essence of Bureaucrat," and so we have people. Tim on Facebook. Now, keep in mind, it's going to be like an advertising of a cologne. Or a perfume, you know, the essence of bureaucrat by Asa, or The essence of bureaucrat. Smells like money. The smell. Now, probably instead of smell, would be like the fragrance of power. Backroom deals. So write that down, Joe. Write the fragrance of money, power, backroom deals. Okay. And then you came up with nepotism. So yeah, that's got to go in there too. And it's all got to be done in a sexy voice. The essence of bureaucrat. So we're gonna keep track of that, and feel free. Let us know what else we should add to it. I'm gonna spend the rest of my morning. I got a feeling like, I want to go now. I've got to go watch like perfume commercials. Yeah, it's gonna be a great parody. You guys are gonna love it. Now we had a caller who was saying that if we use cologne or we use perfume in the parody, that's not gender. That's gender specific, and that'd be a bad thing. So they were picking up. I was inferring that we need to use another, and so she suggested use the French word for toilet water. That's an interesting. Okay. So, and how would you pronounce that? That's the French word for toilet water, eau de toilette. It says it's a lightly scented cologne used as a skin freshener. What? That's a real thing? That there's a real perfume that's... Huh. That translates to the English as toilet water. Wow. Interesting. I had no idea. That was crazy to me. Okay, real quick. Look at this headline right here. This is kind of building on what we talked about yesterday. The U.S. weighing curb on China and tech sector. Trump aid studies options to guard sensitive industries. So the Trump administration is really cracking down on Chinese investments in technology because essentially the allegation is they think that they're spying on us and they're getting our proprietary technology. The Treasury Department officials are working on plans to identify technology sectors in which Chinese companies would be banned from investing. All right. Now, you combine that with this piece over at the Washington Free Beacon. I saw this, and it kind of made the hair stand up on the back of my neck a little bit, that the U.S. electric grid is vulnerable to unprecedented waves of attack. Threats increase as industry scrambles to boost security. The U.S. electric grid has become increasingly vulnerable to what the federal government is describing as an unprecedented wave of attacks that threatens to cripple the nation, according to a new investigative report. Amid a wave of increasing attacks across the country on key power stations, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, has been struggling to force the power industry to enact a series of security improvements meant to stop would-be attackers and terrorists from crippling the nation's infrastructure. Now, the question is, the question would be, how much of this can be done remotely? That's the key. You know, it kind of harkens back to the Stuxnet virus that the U.S. kind of ratted and kind of gave up, that Israel had put the Stuxnet virus into the Iran nuclear centrifuges, and it actually slowly, speeds some process up where it actually destroys the hardware eventually. And that's the thing. When you get to if they can ever do something remotely, if there's a risk of not just something, a software glitch, but if it's a piece of software that actually somehow destroys the hardware, then you got to wait for replacements, or you got to put replacements in. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a really big deal. And so what I have seen, and look, I know people want to focus on Russia. Trump kicked those diplomats out and everything else. Take that for what it is. but there seems to be more of a focus on China, from what I can tell, as a threat, an economic threat, and that sort of thing, technology threat. And here in Arkansas, we're giving our taxpayer dollars to China and hope that they create some jobs.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Thanks to a lot of different people. So the next few months, I think we're really going to see, okay, what's the goal? Because they're actually going to have to get into, start listing out some recommendations on, okay, keep this sales tax exemption or not, or let's lower the income tax rate in this bracket by this much. So I think we'll see more of that going forward. But it hasn't been super clear, at least to me, what the end goal is for the income tax or sales tax. It's just been a lot of information, and I think maybe over the next few months we'll see some of the end goal recommendations. Yeah. One thing I did want to mention, Paul, though, that came up and was passed in yesterday's meeting was they passed at least the authority to enter into another consulting contract.
Oh, great.
And so if you remember, of course, you covered many times on the show, Randy Bauer was the initial consultant that came on to the task force and was fired. And so they had one meeting without any consultant, and I actually thought that went really well, a lot of really good information from BLR and DFNA. And then this meeting this week was without really any consultant being there, but they have authorized up to, I think, $88,000 for a consultant for some dynamic scoring. It's the I can't remember the name, but it's some of the same people who did some of the dynamic scoring for the Big River Steel. So basically what they're wanting to do is say, okay, if we get rid of these exemptions, if we keep these corporate welfare incentives, if we make this change here, what's the dynamic score rather than just the
static
score of, okay, we'll get $50 million less money. What impact will it have to this revenue stream or that revenue stream? So that's something that, did come out of the task force this week is this new consulting contract for dynamic scoring.
Interesting. Okay, well, I guess we'll kind of see where we go from here. I mean, I'm a fan of dynamic scoring. I think that's where the left always gets you. They want to score tax cuts based on a static scoring level. I mean, but I don't know. It's just with what has happened with the whole consultant thing in the past, and these task forces have ended up.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Tim is coming up with some great ones here. Nothing says aristocrat like essence of bureaucrat. That's another good one, Joe. You wrote that one down, right? 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. Oh, my goodness. All right, Conduit for Action. David Ferguson with his new article. By the way, this time, I guess tomorrow at 7:05, we'll be talking with Senator Brian King. And then at 7:33 tomorrow, we'll be talking with Senator Linda Collins-Smith. On Friday, let me look at my schedule. Then on Friday, we have at the 7 o'clock hour, State Representative Kim Hammer And 7:33, State Representative Mark Lowry will be on the program. All right. Headline here: reducing number of state agencies is not about reducing government. ConduitFraction.org. An article by David Ferguson, who is the former head of the Arkansas Bureau of Legislative Research, and he worked there for 30 years. Governor Asa Hutchinson announced that if he is reelected, he will reduce the number of state agencies from 42 to 20. Judging by social media posts, he writes, both his supporters and his critics seem to assume the announcement is a conservative move to reduce the size of state government. Supporters see the announcement as showing his conservative credentials. The governor's critics see the announcement as a political move to head off his opponent in the Republican primary, Jan Morgan, by trying to appear conservative after 3 years of growing government. What both supporters and critics misunderstand is this: reducing the number of state agencies is not about reducing the size of state government, not about any significant reduction in state expenditures, and has nothing to do with being conservative or liberal. Now, again, this is David Ferguson. He knows a thing or two about the way things work down there at the Marble Palace, as working for the Bureau for 30-something years and then being the head of the Bureau as well. So he knows a thing or two. So listen to that again. It has nothing to do with being conservative or liberal, has nothing to do with any significant reduction in state expenditures, has nothing to do with reducing the size of government. What the governor is talking about when he announces this political move is how to manage the same amount of government. Now, that is a key point. What he's really talking about is how he manages the same amount of government. It's about management style. The proposed administrative consolidation effort could result in some savings or could result in higher management costs. We don't know. The governor has not corrected the misunderstanding of supporters and critics, so I expect critics will ask, were we supposed to misunderstand during the campaign? Perhaps I should also clarify that the campaign promise has nothing to do with the long list of licensing agencies. The governor said he hopes the administrative consolidation of state agencies will result in efficiencies in government. Agency heads will definitely look for efficiencies, but finding financial savings will be the more difficult task. What about staffing? Administrative consolidation of agencies does not necessarily mean lower staff costs. In some consolidations, an additional level of management is created on top of what exists. Plus, there can be a reluctance to reduce salaries of employees who are agency heads and who become division managers. The governor has already said no to cutting staff. Instead, he says if there can be a reduction in staff, it will be handled by not filling some vacancies. This is similar to the many hiring freezes over the years, and yet government has continued to grow. What about operating costs? Another factor limiting savings is the new divisions will still be housed in various locations in buildings around Pulaski County. This limits the ability to combine services. For example, copier services or computer services are hard to combine when there are distances between divisions. Majority of agency expenditures are not in play either here. The staff and internal operations and the costs there are only a small part of government expenditures. For example, the Department of Human Services oversees massive social programs, and even if you could eliminate all staff costs, the reduction would only be a drop in the bucket of agency expenditures. Are there any benefits from combining state agencies? David Ferguson writes, if there is a need to work together, Where agencies are doing closely related functions that are efficiencies, there are efficiencies to be had, he writes, even if the efficiency is nothing more than providing better services. For example, the legislature's Bureau of Legislative Research absorbed the staff of the Arkansas Code Revision Commission under Act 1260 of 2005. While the act did not result in a saving in staffing, it allowed the two staffs to better work together on drafting and codifying legislation. Targeting agencies with overlapping functions is a good idea, but this will be more difficult to find when trying to hit a goal of reducing administrative heads from 42 to 20. Management style. The main benefit will be in the governor's ability to manage state agencies because he would have a smaller cabinet reporting to him. This is about management style. Governor Mike Beebe had as many agencies but didn't seem to be hampered by it. This is likely because of Beebe's hands-on management style and his thorough knowledge of state government from his previous service as a state senator and as the attorney general. Then you got to look at resource shifting. Another benefit to a governor is that consolidation of agencies makes it easier to shift resources from one program to another without the need for legislation. This is great if you are governor, but in the past, there have been complaints by those whose resources are being taken. For example, resource stealing was one of the complaints that came up in the failed consolidation of the Department of Human Services and the Health Department into the Department of Health and Human Services by Act 1954 of 2005. Some in the Health Department claimed their ability to perform their required duties was hampered by resources being shifted to Human Services. Resource stealing is also at the heart of complaints about Governor Hutchinson moving the Arkansas History Commission to the Department of Heritage. The resource being shifted is the office space of the State Archives, which was specially designed climate control vaults to protect documents. A plan to move the archives to an old building has been controversial because of concern that the irreplaceable documents will not be adequately protected. Agency consolidation examples of success and failure. Okay, here's the failure. David Ferguson. Again, this guy knows where the bodies are buried. The biggest agency consolidation disaster was Governor Mike Huckabee's merger of the Arkansas Department of Health and the Arkansas Department of Human Services into a new agency named the Department of Health and Human Services. It was thought the agency's related missions would lead to efficiencies in government. Instead, the next 2 years was a nightmare. During the transition period, I talked to several employees of the new agency. They told me of being pulled off critical work for their divisions to spend substantial time and effort to try to get the already large agencies to speak the same language. Computer systems had to be standardized. Specialized programs had to be redone so the programs could talk across the new agencies. Stacks of forms and procedures had to be standardized. In many instances, standardization resulted in a poor fit for one agency or both because of their varying missions. And as mentioned before, there were complaints about resource stealing from Health and Human Services. David Ferguson writes, the Health and Human Services merger was such a disaster that after 2 years, the agencies were restored as separate agencies by Governor Mike Beebe pursuant to Act 384 of 2005. So what are some successes? Governor Huckabee also had a success in 2005 by Act 1978 of 2005, which created the Arkansas Agricultural Department and merged several agencies into the new agency. Merger of the agencies was not done to save money, nor was it done to reduce government. Instead, it furthered the goal of increasing the status of the new agency and of agriculture in state government. Why not consolidate now instead of making promises? A Facebook user asked, quote, why is he, Asa, delaying until after re-election when he could have included it in the special session? The governor's announcement came on the heels of the special session of the General Assembly, which he called and which he controlled the agenda. The insinuation made by the question is since the governor didn't do anything in the special session, the timing suggests it is a campaign stunt. But there is another good political reason to delay consolidation until after the election. In any consolidation of agencies, there is the likelihood that some groups affected by the consolidation will be upset. Taking on such complaints in the middle of a campaign season would not be wise for any incumbent. Having a smaller cabinet is generally a good idea, he writes. How the idea is executed will determine whether it's worthwhile. The administrative consolidation of the state agencies is likely to be a difficult process. But here again is the point I'm making, David Ferguson writes. The announcement has been misunderstood. Reducing the number of agency heads from 42 to 20 is not cutting government and is neither conservative or liberal. It is about reducing the size of the governor's cabinet, meaning the smaller cabinet still will manage the same size of government that it currently is now. So that's a very good, that's the best point in this whole article. Now, what do I think about this? Well, I'd said from the beginning. Folks, I just want you to know, Jan Morgan has gone, I've listened to several Jan Morgan speeches, and she talks about how many boards and commissions and state agencies we have. And the governor, people on Facebook joke that Jan Morgan shouldn't come out with any more policy positions because Asa will just steal them and adopt them as his own. That's what, if you look on Facebook, that's what people are saying. So that being said, of course it was a political stunt. Of course. Are we to say that him making doing the pomp and circumstance, I'm going to reduce agencies by 50%, that's not a political consideration? And I would just say, I know there are Republicans that like the idea. I know there are Republicans but if I were a Republican in elected office, there's just no way I would take what the governor's saying seriously because you're just like, oh yeah, well that's just an election. Everybody knows, Democrat and Republican alike at the Marble Palace knows that Governor Asa Hutchinson fought tooth and nail from having to debate a bathroom bill. He got nephew number 2, Jeremy Hutchinson, to keep from in the Judiciary Committee to stop from even discussing whether or not we should pass a law that says, hey, if you're a man, you go into this room to use the bathroom in public. If you're a woman, you go into this room to use the bathroom in public. And he fought tooth and nail, and now he comes out with paid Facebook posts and Twitter posts that say Asa was the first governor, or he led the way in trying to fight Obama's mandates on schools and gender-neutral bathrooms and things like that. And they're citing a letter that Asa wrote, or a press release that Asa wrote saying, it's not a mandate, just so you know, it's just guidance. We don't have to follow it. We can ignore this because it's not a mandate from the federal government. It's just guidance from the federal government. And he's claiming that as some sort of, like he's some sort of champion when he fought tooth and nail and didn't want, legislators to run bills that were going to be controversial because of Walmart and because of what was going on in North Carolina, or what the news media was, the perception that they were advancing in North Carolina. So, of course, reducing agencies by 50%, of course it's a political stunt. This guy, he is, like I said yesterday, he should have whiplash because he's moving so far to the right so fast. Really is. Hang on, let me check in on our Facebook audience. We got anything else? The essence of bureaucrat. I think let's see here. I'm looking for more cologne. Let's see here. What did you say, Joe? Deception. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Deception. The essence of bureaucrat. Become an aristocrat with the essence of bureaucrat. We got to take a break. It's Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you guys. Back in just a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Chris on Facebook, smells like the south end of a northbound rhino. Well, it's funny you should say the word rhino, Chris, because Joe had an excellent idea, right? There's another phrase in the essence of bureaucrat. So rolling out, from the Not a Rhino collection, essence of bureaucrat by Asa. Oh, my goodness. Tim on Facebook writes, every single time I hear Asa speak, I'm reminded of Orwell's 1984, the epitome of doublespeak. You know, what's interesting, I was thinking about 1984 the other day. I was born in 1984, and I had this terrible thought. I was born in 84, and, when 1984 was written, that was supposed to be, far off date. But I was born in 84. And yet, in my lifetime, even now, if you're watching some of this stuff with Facebook and the amount of data they're selling, and they're collecting on people that they don't even know. People don't even realize just how much of their information. They had one article saying that Facebook is actually listening to you. We have the technology to enslave ourselves. If the revelations about Facebook were coming out, and it wasn't Facebook, but it was the federal government, I mean, there would be much more outrage. I mean, there still wouldn't be enough, because you get these idiots who say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. It's like, do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand what the Fourth Amendment is? Do you understand what personal liberty is? Do you understand the nature of man and how corrupt we are and what we will do to other people? If you have a massive surveillance state, the question is not, whether or not to use it. I mean, that's then the question. I mean, people are going to use it. It's not why, how could you? It's why wouldn't you use it? That's the mentality of a human being. So it's fascinating. I guess a couple of weeks ago, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it might have been a month ago or so, I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if there's anything significant there. I was just imagining if the people who were born in the year 1984 or after will actually see what Orwell predicted. Will we live in that situation? You know what I'm saying? So, State Representative Dan Sullivan, we need to get him back on the show soon. I've got this announcement here. He's actually working with a group here in Northeast Arkansas, and there are. You guys familiar with Arkansas Right to Life? Arkansas Right to Life is the organization that is for pro-life bills and things like that. They're anti-abortion. So there's an attempt. State Representative Dan Sullivan is working to attempt to reactivate a local chapter of Arkansas Right to Life in his district, again in Craighead County. And so for our listeners who are listening on KBTM out of Jonesboro, 101.3 or 1230 a.m., if you guys are interested in that, there is a meeting to reorganize the local Arkansas Right to Life chapter on April the 5th. April the 5th. Now, that's a Thursday, so that's next Thursday. And it'll be from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Round Room in Craighead County at the Public Library at 315 West Oak Street in Jonesboro. The Craighead County Public Library. Again, so if you're interested, if you're one of these, pro-life is my number one issue, but a lot of people now are getting engaged with local pregnancy help centers and things like that, and are really through relationships and caring for other people, are helping people to choose life, and that's really, really good and powerful. But if you're interested in participating in this local chapter of Arkansas Right to Life, it's Thursday, April 5th, again at the Public Library in Jonesboro there, from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Of course, you've got the statewide director, Rose Mims, is from Arkansas Right to Life. Anyway, the phone number, if you want to call us or text us or leave us a voicemail, 870-275-9799. We're out of time. I want to remind you, though, over at Conduit News, you get it all. ConduitNews.com for free. You get the archives, okay, video archives. You get the podcast. You can also go to iTunes, go to SoundCloud. Give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as our YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Conduit News, and share the smaller video clips that you see, because some people don't have 2 hours. Some people aren't like you. Talk radio listeners are the best, and some people, though, they only have 3 minutes. They only have 5 minutes. So share the videos that you want to show with your friends. Let them know what's going on. Tell a friend about this program. Tell them where you heard it. Tell them that this information they're not getting it anywhere else about the growth of government and what we need to do. We have to have a government that accurately represents the people, okay? Not the special interests, but the people. Anyway, we gotta go. We're gonna be back here tomorrow. Thanks for listening, Arkansas. Be safe.